Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 22,000 mile review of the 2015 Yamaha FZ-09.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. I bought this bike in March of 2016 and I ride about 450 miles a week. I wanted to give my perspective in two primary areas. One, what's it like to ride this bike as a short rider? I'm 5'5" with a 28-inch inseam. The second thing I wanted to talk about was how good is this bike for long distance commuters. I ride about 100 miles a day, back and forth to work, so I wanted to give my perspective on that. Thanks again for watching. If you liked the video, please feel free to subscribe. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. Thanks again.
Okay, the first thing I want to talk about for this motorcycle is how good is it for short riders. As I said, I'm 5'5". I have about a 28-inch inseam, and the seat height combined with the foot peg position and the somewhat upright handlebars work together really well for short riders. With my boots on, and my boots have about a 3/4 inch sole, I can sit on the motorcycle and flat feet both feet, so that's really, really cool. Being short, I tend to sit closer to the tank, so that's probably helping with some of the ability to flat feet. If I sit on the motorcycle with my sneakers, then I can get the balls of both feet flat on the ground. So even with sneakers on, with very little to no sole, it's still pretty good for a short rider. So short riders out there, rejoice, you can ride this bike. You can ride this bike with confidence. The second thing I want to talk about, and the primary reason for this review, is how good it is the Yamaha FZ-09, the 2015 model, for long-term and long-distance commuting. As I said, I ride this motorcycle about 450 miles a week, about 100 miles a day, 45 miles one way. This bike is, quite frankly, nearly perfect as a long-distance commuter. Nearly perfect. There are two primary gripes that I'd like to get out of the way right away, and then we'll get on to the good stuff. The first thing I want to talk about that's my gripe is the stock seat. If you'll notice the stock seat, it has these two different materials. I find what tends to happen is I wear jeans when I ride. When I sit, I tend to slide forward, and then the jeans catch on the stickiness of this material. And so what happens is the material in my jeans tends to pull backwards as the longer I ride, and it causes quite a bit of discomfort in my groin area. What I find myself doing is having to stand up on the foot pegs periodically and just kind of adjusting myself and sitting back down. So that's one gripe. The second gripe I have is vibration and noise I get from this area. The automatic cam chain tensioner was replaced during one of the safety recalls of this motorcycle, and ever since I've had the automatic cam chain tensioner replaced, I get the feeling like maybe it's not doing its job and the cam chain is a little loose, causing some clacking sounds inside of here. If anybody out there has that same sort of problem, I sure would appreciate you telling me so in the comments of this video. I've taken it to two different dealers on a bunch of different occasions for different things and asked them about it, and they say there's nothing wrong. So maybe it's psychosomatic, maybe it's psychological, having the automatic cam chain tensioner replaced. Maybe that's something that I'm just telling myself that there's a problem. Heck, I've got 22,000 miles on this thing, and it hasn't broken down yet on me. I do have a second-year warranty that I bought aftermarket through the Yamaha program. So hopefully, if anything does break, I'll be able to have that fixed through the warranty system. Okay, I want to point out some of what the dashboard has to offer. There are two things that I really like about the dashboard on the FZ-09. The first thing is the gear position indicator. The fact that it has that on there, I find it very, very convenient as I'm coming to a slowdown, as I'm coming into a corner to look down and know that I'm in second gear and not third gear. If you've ever driven a motorcycle that doesn't have a gear position indicator, if you're like me, it's pretty easy to forget which gear you're in, so having the gear position indicator is a really, really cool feature on this motorcycle. The second thing I like is the gas gauge. It's a full gas gauge. It doesn't just show you when you're almost ready to run out of gas, it shows you the full range. It is a bit peculiar. I'll drive 45 miles to work and it will show a full tank. And on my way home, it won't go down. The first 2 bars won't go down until I'm almost halfway home, and then after that it goes down really fast. So it's a little quirky, but still I appreciate having the full gas gauge on this thing. Yes, that is 22,053 miles on this bad boy. 22,053 miles. You'll notice with the sun above me that it's kind of hard to see the tachometer, which is right across the top. If I rev this up a bit, you can see the bar move. But the shadow from the black hides the numbers. It would be nice if this black was up a little bit further and the numbers bigger, but quite frankly, after a few months of riding this, and probably any motorcycle, how much you pay attention to the tachometer becomes less and less. I rarely even look at the tachometer, I just kind of get used to the sound. So one other thing you'll notice is there is a mode. Those of you that know anything about the FZ-09 know that there are 3 modes. Standard mode is just that. It's kind of the middle mode. You've got also A mode, which is a little bit more hooliganist, which gives you a little bit more snappiness in your acceleration. I think the B mode is designed primarily for riding in the rain. I think what it does is it slows the throttle response enough so that you're not jerking the throttle and causing the rear wheel to spin on wet pavement. I spend most of my time in standard mode, which if anybody's ridden this motorcycle, you know standard mode is absolutely perfect. Plenty of torque. We'll talk about torque in a bit. Plenty of torque in this thing in standard mode. Plenty of high-end power. Standard mode is what I ride in all the time, and it's a really fun mode to ride in. The rest of the dash is pretty much your standard stuff. Clock, miles per hour. Cycle through it a little bit. You get your trip 1, your trip 2. If you care to pay attention to it, you can get your miles per gallon. 5 miles per gallon, you can see that that's not very accurate. And it shows you your engine temperature. You're seeing air temperature of 118 degrees. Phoenix, Arizona, hot as the son of a gun. The next thing I want to talk about is the seating position. If you've ever driven a motorcycle that has low handlebars, this seating position is going to feel really strange to you. It is a bit upright. I don't think it's as upright as the FZ-07, but it is pretty upright. The first 2 bikes I've had before this bike was a Triumph Bonneville and then an FZ-6R that I converted to a Street Fighter. On both of those motorcycles, I replaced the handlebars with drag bars, so I got kind of a flat lean forward position, and I like that position. So when I first got this bike, I was thinking about putting drag bars on, but the challenge I had, if you can see the angle, is the gas tank comes up just enough so that if you put drag bars on, the tendency is for the end of your bar to hit your gas tank when you're turning hard left or hard right. So I opted to not change the handlebars on this bike. I have to tell you, after a few months, I've grown to really appreciate the seating position. Primarily because when I merged on the highway, in this upright position, it's really nice to be able to look over your shoulder so you can see where the merging traffic is to keep you from crashing into that merging traffic. So the combination of the low seat height, the foot pegs that sit back just enough so your feet are just under your butt, and the upright handlebars make for a really comfortable commuting position. What I tend to do when I'm on the highway is to get that little more of that aggressive feel. I bend my elbows so I can lean forward just a little bit, so it gives me a bit of an aggressive stance while I'm riding on the highway, but I can sit up if I want to and relax in that upright seating position. I got to tell you, that geometry works very well for folks that want to commute and have to commute for 40 plus miles on the highway. All right, let's talk about suspension on this bike. So it has a single shock in the rear. The front shocks in the videos I've seen about the FZ-09, a lot of folks complain about the front shocks. So what's my take of the front forks? Well, first of all, they're adjustable. They're adjustable on this side, and I'll have to look again on which side is damping and which side is rebound. And so the initial videos and the reviews that I've read when I was deciding to buy this bike said that the front forks were soft and mushy. I gotta tell you, even before I adjusted my front forks, I didn't find them that mushy. Maybe it's because as a commuter I don't do a lot of canyon riding, I don't do a lot of hard cornering, so I'm not doing a lot of hard braking into corners. So for a commuter bike, I think out of the box, the stock setup for the front forks is suitable. That being said, I did find a video online that showed me how to adjust those, so I did adjust them down a little bit, and I find that the ride is a little bit stiffer, and so with a little stiffer ride, I think you get a bit more of a sporty ride out of this. So again, I'm 5'5", I weigh about 175 pounds. I did not touch, I did nothing to the rear shock, and like I said, I did some minor adjustments to stiffen up the front suspension. And I gotta tell you, at 175 pounds riding this bike, even when I have a backpack that weighs probably 15 to 20 pounds, plus anything in the saddlebags, I find the suspension fine. I mean, if you're doing a lot of heavy-duty riding in canyons and heavy-duty cornering, yeah, maybe you'll deal with some of that suspension, the wallowy feel or the mushiness in the front suspension. But if you're looking for a bike that has a lot of power, it's a lot of fun to do some commuting on, the suspension on this will serve you very well. Okay, next thing I want to talk about are the brakes. Up front, you've got the dual disc brakes. In the rear, you've got the single disc brake. So again, with videos I've watched, I've heard people say that the front brakes are just adequate. Well, quite frankly, in the type of riding I do, you know, mostly highway riding and a little bit of street riding, getting from my house to the highway, these brakes are fine, man. These brakes stop me very well in a couple of situations on the highway where I've had to stop really hard. I will let you know that every morning when I get to work, I do 2 sets of emergency braking techniques, and I practice my emergency braking. So the front brakes, I think are fine for the type of riding I do. Again, commuter riding, back and forth to work, in and around town to run errands, these front brakes are plenty adequate. The rear brake, the single disc in the rear, again, I tend to use mostly my front brakes and apply my back brakes. The one thing I noticed with the back brakes is with any of the tires I've had on here, this is my second set, any kind of heavy pressure on the rear brake and the back tire locks up really quick. So just keep that in mind as you're learning to ride this if you buy it or if you're riding it for the first time. So overall, I think the brakes on this bike, fantastic. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is what everybody hears when they watch videos on the FZ-09, and that's the power in this beast, because it is a beast. This inline triple has loads and loads of power, superior torque. I mean, it is just a blast to ride in and around the streets and on the highway. The power gives you the ability to get out of sticky situations on the highway, get around traffic when you need to get around traffic, and quite frankly, just have a blast riding this thing. So what everybody hears about is the snatchiness in the throttle, and the 2015 does come with a bit of snatchiness. If I'm hard accelerating and then I hard decelerate, letting the engine braking take over, and then I accelerate again, is when I typically will catch that snatchiness. So it does require a bit of conscious throttle control in this bike. 2 things I've done to try to help with that. The first thing is the cramp buster. That way I can put my hand on here and not have to grip really hard. I can rest my hand on there. The second thing is, if you'll notice, I took out almost all of the throttle slack on this thing, because I found that with the throttle slack, I would be looking for the throttle to kick in, and then it would kick in hard. So I looked up a video online, found out how to remove some of the throttle slack. I'll try to find that link and put it in here. A word of warning to folks when they get this motorcycle, the power is so deceiving, you don't even feel how fast you're going. On the highway, a few times when I've had to get out of sticky situations and around heavy traffic, when I feel like I was getting boxed in, man, I gotta tell you, in 6th gear, a quick throttle, and I go from 80 miles an hour to somewhat faster than 80 miles an hour, and I don't even realize it. You look down at the speedometer and you see what the speed is, and the bike is so smooth that you have no idea that you're going that fast. So be careful. This bike, like I say, it's a lot of fun. It has all the power you need to get out of trouble on the highway. It also has all the power you need to get in all kinds of trouble on the highway. So just be careful with that. Here's an interesting thing that most people won't even consider. But take a peek at that front fender. From this angle, what does it remind you of? Yeah, you don't have to think very hard. It reminds you of Batman's helmet, Batman's mask, whatever you want to call it. Those little pointed things right in front of the forks, they sure look like Batman ears. So aesthetically, I don't like that very much, but very functional. If we drag ourselves around this way, you'll notice that this whole assembly is doing one thing. It's killing bugs here so the bugs aren't dying on here. The first bike I had, that Bonneville, had exposed parts of that fork right there, and when bugs would die and calcify, they would cause the fork seals to deteriorate, and within about 8,000 or 9,000 miles on that first motorcycle, I had to change the fork seals, and that was a pain. So while the look is kind of funky, it's funky. They probably could have rounded those ears off a little bit to make it look not so Batman-like. I really do appreciate the functionality of killing the bugs before they get to the forks. All right, let's talk about some of the modifications I made to this bike. You'll notice that I haven't done much to modify this motorcycle. The standard thing most people do is they remove the tail section and they'll put some sort of a tail tidy on there. Well, I got to tell you, for me, for commuting purposes, this works out well, because if you'll notice, I have straps attached to this thing on both sides that allows me to strap my backpack down. So for the money, it was really a waste of money to me to tidy this up, because it took away some functionality I needed as a commuter. Another thing that I have seen other FZ-09 owners do is replace the stock handlebars with some sort of an aftermarket clip-on or lower bar. Again, I considered that, but after riding it for a few months, I realized how beneficial this was for commuters who need to have the ability, or an easy ability, to look over their shoulder while they're riding on the highway to make sure they're seeing that merging traffic. So I kept the stock handlebars. You'll notice that one thing that's missing is the stock mirrors. Because it's a naked bike and because I'm used to it, I like the open feel that I get from a naked bike with the mirrors gone. Instead, I put bar-end mirrors on. And the reason I like bar-end mirrors is I personally think that you get a better field of view, and they give more of a sporty look than the stock bars. So that's why I did that. So another modification I made was adding the small front fairing. I believe I got that from PJ's Parts. I'm not sure. I'll find the link. It came black. I added the color scheme to match the Kenny Roberts style color scheme from when he used to race Yamaha motorcycles. I put the fairing on for 3 reasons. One, it looks good. I mean, the fairing gives the bike a little bit of a sporty look. I mean, this is a sporty bike, so I like the look. The second reason is I ride on the highway a lot, and so I needed something to knock down some of the wind off my chest. And while this doesn't eliminate it, it does knock down enough of the wind. But really, the main reason is, if you look behind the fairing, there are exposed wires, there are exposed everything here. And quite frankly, if you'll notice the front of the fairing, I got dead bugs and dead bugs and dead bugs and rock chips. All that stuff is being blocked by the fairing. If I didn't have the fairing, the rocks would be hitting the cables, the dead bugs would be getting in there, dying and calcifying, causing all kinds of a mess. Cleaning this is a whole lot easier than getting in there and cleaning that. So that's why I put the fairing on. There are 2 other things that I added to the motorcycle that aren't really considered modifications, and you're seeing them here. One is the soft saddlebags. I've had those for about 3 years, and they've served me really well. Nelson Rig, I've got a separate review on those. These are really nice. I can keep my tools in here. After about 3 years, they still work well. The zippers, they have kind of a low profile. They work well, the zippers work well, they have kind of a low profile. While it still detracts from the sporty look, it's something I was willing to compromise so that I could have the flexibility of having a place to store stuff. This works really well in the wintertime, especially. In the wintertime in Arizona, when I go to work at 4:30 in the morning, it can be 30 degrees out, so I need several layers of cold gear. By the time I come home in the afternoon, it's 65 degrees, so I don't need those layers. So what's cool about the saddlebags is I can roll those up, put them in plastic bags, and then put them in the saddlebags, and I don't have to worry about them. I carry a backpack with me every day with my laptop and about 15 pounds of other stuff in it. When it gets hot like this, it's really hard to deal with the backpack, so I've added these rock straps. If you've never seen them, ROK, rock straps. They're really versatile straps, super strong. So instead of wearing my backpack, I unsnap these, lay the backpack down, snap them in, and I'm ready to go. Of course, they look kind of ugly because they're so long, but again, that's a compromise I was willing to assume. So one other thing I added was this really small tank bag. I did it primarily because when I come to an intersection and I see homeless people, I want to help them, but I don't want to give them money. I've had a brother who was homeless for a while, and when he got money, he bought drugs or alcohol. So instead, what I do is I typically will have Burger King gift cards that I'll put in there, and when I come to an intersection with a homeless person, I'll give them a $5 Burger King, so at least I know they're going to get something to eat. The other thing I do with this is, even though I use Google Maps on my phone with headphones, I like to be able to look ahead when I'm going places at what streets are coming up next. So what I like to do sometimes is do some high-tech stuff. I lay out all the streets that I'm going to be driving on, and whether I'm turning left or right, I put it on a sticky note and I stick it in that see-through pouch. So that's a really cool little bag for those types of needs. One thing that I read, or one thing that I see, is a lot of folks like to put aftermarket exhaust. And I put an aftermarket exhaust on the Bonneville, and it increased the sound and gave me 3 or 4 more horsepower. And that's important for the Bonneville. But quite frankly, I ride these so much and I put so many miles on it that for me to put an aftermarket exhaust just to gain a few extra horsepower and a throatier sound on this bike was a waste of $1,000 or a waste of $800. Quite frankly, I don't know, the horsepower in this thing is 108, 109 horsepower, and it's got so much torque that I really think the advantage gained with horsepower and torque by putting an aftermarket exhaust just wasn't worth it for me. I mean, I'd rather spend the money on the tank bags and that kind of stuff so that I can make this bike more user-friendly. And no matter what you put for aftermarket exhaust on there, it doesn't increase the value when you try to trade it in on a new bike. I found that the hard way when I traded the FZ-06R on this bike. So, I really, really like the stock exhaust. I like the fact that it's neat, it's tucked up underneath so you can't even see it. On some of the bikes that have the exhaust that stick way up here, behind the swing arm, I'm a symmetrical guy. I like things to look symmetrical. So when I see one exhaust on one side and nothing on the other side, to me it has an unbalanced look to it. So I really appreciate the FZ-09's tucked under exhaust. So even at my age, at 56 years old, I'm almost 57, riding a motorcycle is not pure function. Riding a motorcycle is also fun. And I gotta tell you, the fun factor on this motorcycle is absolutely phenomenal. The torque, the cornering, the seating position, the whole package just exudes fun. On a scale of 1 to 10, the fun factor on this bike is no kidding, a 12. If you're looking for a bike that's gonna provide you with smiles, power, the ability to commute, this is a great bike. So I talked a lot about the motorcycle. What I want to do now is give you a quick summary. Remember, there were 2 things that I was concerned about with this review. One was, is this bike useful? Is this a good bike for short riders? And 2, what's this bike like for somebody who does a lot of long distance commuting? And the answer is awesome, awesome, awesome. For short riders, we already talked about it. With my boots on, I can flat foot this thing. The seating position is comfortable, slightly upright. It allows you to merge traffic pretty easily. So for short riders, this is an A+ motorcycle. And when I say short, I'm referring to myself 5 foot 5 inches at about a 28-inch inseam. So use that as a reference point. And is this a good bike for somebody who commutes, especially a lot of miles on the highway? Another A+. I talked about the seat causing a problem. So if you're going to get this bike and you really want full comfort, that's the first thing you probably want to change, is to buy an aftermarket seat with a little more padding. Of course, that's going to increase the seat height, so it's going to affect your foot position. But again, even with my sneakers on, I can put the balls of my feet on the ground on both sides. So 2 things: short riders, thumbs up. Highway commuting, long distance commuting back and forth to work, thumbs up. This is an all-around really fun motorcycle, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm really glad I bought it.